The Giants did not just add DJ Reader. They just put several defensive linemen on notice. That is the part nobody is paying attention to this morning. For weeks, Big Blue needed a real body in the middle. Not a camp flyer. Not a bargain bin maybe. Not another undersized interior piece being asked to survive double teams. They needed a grown man nose tackle who could walk into the building and immediately change the math against the run. And now, according to the authoritative source brief for this episode, DJ Reader has agreed to terms with New York on a 2-year, $12.5 million deal. That number matters because it is not superstar money, but it is also not throwaway depth money. It means the Giants expect him to play, rotate, and squeeze someone off the comfortable part of this depth chart. John Harbaugh is not building a soft defense around Jackson Dart's offense. He is building a team that can win ugly, and Reader is the first real camp collision. Let's be honest about where things stand. The Giants' defensive front had a problem that could not be solved with slogans. They needed more mass inside. They needed more reliability against downhill runs. They needed a defender who could hold ground instead of getting washed sideways when teams leaned on double teams. The holes are clear. Dexter Lawrence cannot be the entire interior plan by himself. If every serious run fit depends on one star eating 2 blockers, the defense becomes fragile. When Lawrence needs a breather, the middle cannot turn into an open lane. The second problem is the rotation. The Giants have bodies, but bodies are not the same as defined roles. There is a difference between a player who can take preseason snaps and a player who can play meaningful downs in November with the game on the line. This is where it gets real. A veteran nose tackle does not arrive in May without consequences. The back-end defensive tackle group now has less oxygen. The third nose tackle, the fourth interior lineman, and the weekly inactive candidate are all in danger. That means players in that bubble tier have to prove they are not just replaceable. Jordan Riley has to show he can anchor. Elijah Chapman has to show his leverage and quickness translate against heavier personnel. Rakeem Nunez-Roches, if still viewed as part of the veteran depth picture, has to prove the Giants need his role after adding another veteran body. The Giants also had a roster construction problem. Too many recent versions of this team asked the offense to be perfect while the defense leaked hidden yardage. That is poison for a young starting quarterback like Jackson Dart. If Dart is the current starter, the defense cannot hand him second and short all season. It cannot put him in shootouts every week. It cannot ask him to carry chaos while the run defense bleeds. And that brings us to what just happened. DJ Reader to the New York Giants is not cosmetic. It has real weight. According to the authoritative source brief, Reader agreed to terms with New York on a 2-year, $12.5 million deal. That matters because a 2-year structure tells you this is not just a 1-week tryout. The Giants are giving themselves more than 1 season of control, but they are not trapping the cap sheet in a massive long-term bet. That is smart roster building. Reader is 31 years old. That matters because the Giants are not buying a developmental prospect. They are buying a finished role player who understands hand placement, gap discipline, and how to survive the dirty snaps casual fans never notice. And yes, the injury history has to be part of the conversation. Reader has dealt with major lower body injuries in his career, including a torn quad and a torn knee ligament. That matters because the Giants are not getting a perfect medical profile. They are making a calculated bet on a veteran whose best trait is still exactly what this defense needed. This is the part nobody is talking about. A nose tackle does not need to produce fantasy stats to change a defense. If Reader takes on a center and a guard, keeps the linebacker clean, and turns 2nd and 4 into 2nd and 8, that is production. It will not always show up in the box score, but it changes the game. That is why I like this move. The Giants have spent too many years trying to patch defensive problems with hope. Hope that a young player jumps. Hope that a rotational lineman becomes more than a rotational lineman. Hope that one star can cover every structural weakness. Reader gives them a cleaner answer. He is a real nose tackle. He is a veteran presence. He lets the Giants define the front with more honesty. Dexter Lawrence can still be the centerpiece, but he does not have to be the emergency plan for every interior problem. That overlay matters because it is not about 2 names on a graphic. It is about making offenses account for weight, leverage, and power on early downs. And under John Harbaugh, that fits the larger direction. The roster fact for this episode is clear. Harbaugh is the head coach, and Jackson Dart is the starting quarterback. That combination makes the defensive plan even more important. A young starting quarterback needs a team around him that reduces volatility. He needs field position. He needs manageable game scripts. He needs a defense that can get off the field without turning every drive into a wrestling match at midfield. Reader helps with that. Now, I am not going to sit here and pretend this signing solves every defensive issue. It does not. He is not a magic button. He is not being paid like a savior. But he is being paid like a real part of the plan, and that distinction matters. The Giants did not need a headline-chasing move. They needed a stabilizer, a grown-up interior defender, a player who makes the room less theoretical. That is what this signing is. And when you see how it hits the rest of the defensive line room, the whole picture starts to click. Reader solves one problem, but he creates another one immediately. That is how serious teams get better. When you add a veteran nose tackle on a 2-year deal, according to the authoritative source brief, you are not just adding talent. You are reshaping roster battles before training camp. That matters because roster pressure is healthy. The Giants cannot keep treating every depth player like a future answer. At some point, the room has to become competitive enough that decent players get pushed. So who is actually at risk? Start with the pure nose tackle depth. Jordan Riley is the obvious name fans should watch. His path becomes narrower because Reader can take the heavy early down snaps Riley would need to claim. If Riley wants a roster spot, he has to show more than size. He has to show snap-to-snap trust. Then look at Elijah Chapman. I like the energy. I like the leverage. I like the underdog profile. But Reader's arrival changes the question. Chapman cannot just be a fun preseason story. He has to prove he offers a different skill set the Giants cannot easily replace. That matters because defensive line rooms are not built by collecting similar players. They are built by stacking different answers. Power, quickness, length, anchor, pass rush juice, special teams usefulness, game day flexibility. Reader is not here to take every snap. He is here to make the snap allocation more logical. And that puts pressure on the veterans too. If Raheem Nunez-Roches is still in the mix, his margin gets thinner. The Giants now have another veteran who can do the dirty work inside. That means the front office has to ask a cold question. Do they need both veterans? Or does one younger player with upside become more valuable? That is not personal. That is roster math. That overlay matters because this is exactly where good teams make hard decisions. Sentiment does not win the NFC East. Clean roster roles do. The Giants are not just building a depth chart. They are building a defensive identity that protects the offense. And with Jackson Dart as the starter, every defensive improvement has offensive consequences. If the run defense improves, Dart gets more normal games. If the defensive line controls early downs, Harbaugh can call games with patience. If Big Blue forces longer third downs, the pass rush gets unleashed. That is where the DJ Reader move becomes bigger than DJ Reader. It is a structural move. And when you combine that structure with the coming camp battles, you can see the reset forming. The Reader signing proves the Giants are not waiting for camp to sort everything out by accident. They are forcing the issue early. According to the authoritative source brief, the move could affect how the Giants defend the run, manage the defensive line rotation, and approach roster battles heading into camp. That matters because those are the 3 pressure points that decide whether this signing becomes meaningful. First, the run defense. Reader's job is simple in theory and violent in reality. Hold the point. Eat space. Make the ball bounce. Let linebackers run clean. That is not glamorous. It is necessary. Second, the rotation. The Giants can now avoid asking one interior player to do everything. Lawrence can be moved, protected, and deployed with more creativity. Reader can absorb the ugliest snaps. The younger linemen can compete for clearer roles instead of being miscast. Third, the roster battle. This is where fans need to pay attention. The bubble is no longer abstract. Riley, Chapman, Nunez-Roches, and any other interior depth piece now have to earn their oxygen. One bad camp week can change the room. One strong preseason game can save a job. That is why this is more than meets the eye. A lot of fans will look at $12.5 million over 2 years and shrug. But that contract number, according to the authoritative source brief, tells me the Giants were serious enough to commit, but disciplined enough not to overpay. That is exactly the balance this franchise has needed. This is not fantasy football. This is trench maintenance. This is roster pressure. This is the New York Football Giants remembering that defense still travels. Now comes the part where I take a side. Hot take. DJ Reader will be one of the 5 most important defensive players on the Giants this season. And I am not backing down from that. Not because he is the flashiest. Not because he is going to pile up sacks. Because he fixes the kind of problem that ruins entire Sundays. Here is my prediction. Reader plays at least 12 games and becomes the main reason the Giants' early down run defense looks more stable by midseason. That number matters because availability is the key concern with Reader. If he clears that threshold, the signing becomes a real win, not just a nice idea. If I am wrong, I will come back to this video and own it. But I do not think I am wrong. And here is the player take that will make some fans mad. Jordan Riley is officially on the clock. I am not saying he cannot make the roster. I am saying the easy path is gone. Reeder's arrival means Riley has to win a role, not inherit one. That is how it should be. Big Blue has spent too long hoping depth becomes dominance. Harbaugh is forcing competition. Reeder is the tool. The defensive line room is the battleground. So pick a side. Is DJ Reeder the missing stabilizer? Or did the Giants just create an expensive camp squeeze? Big Blue is back at the table, and this time, the plan is being built from the inside out. DJ Reeder is not a savior. He is something better for this roster. He is a role-defining veteran who forces everyone around him to get sharper, tougher, and more useful. That is the reset this franchise needed. The G-men are not just collecting names. They are creating pressure. Pressure on the offensive opponent. Pressure on the depth chart. Pressure on every player who thought his roster spot was safe. Giants fans, honest answer. Are you buying Reeder as the run defense stabilizer? Or are you worried this becomes another veteran bet that looks better in May than it does in December? If you are riding with Big Blue through every move of this rebuild, you know where that subscribe button is. We decode every signing, every roster battle, and every signal behind closed doors. Go Big Blue.